Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Loop and Learn Type 1 Diabetes Speaker Series. Today is exciting for us. We get to hear from Jake Leach, who is the EVP, Executive Vice President and Chief Technology Officer for Dexcom. This is exciting because Dexcom is a tremendously important piece of our technology, and we're just really excited to hear what he has to say with us today. As you all know, on our forum, we always do our disclaimer, which is Loop is a do-it-yourself closed-loop algorithm. This presentation is provided to assist you in making your own decisions in consultation with your healthcare professionals regarding your own diabetes self-management. You take full responsibility for building and running the system and do so at your own risk. And please remember that the Loop is not FDA approved for therapy. Again, to remind you about our website, loopandlearn.org, sign up for the newsletter. Anytime there is an iOS update or a change in software, announcements go out in the newsletter. It's really a good website and it's a really great newsletter, so definitely sign up for that. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how we're going to handle today. Today's presentation with Dexcom. We're asking you very respectfully to keep your videos and microphones off today throughout the entire presentation. We know that you're probably eager to, I didn't share this, did I? Oh my goodness, I know what I'm saying, but you guys don't. There you go. Much better. Okay, guidelines for today's presentation. Please keep your videos and microphones off, and you're eager to ask your questions and concerns. All questions should be entered into the chat, either on Zoom or YouTube, and our admins will gather and organize the topics for our post-presentation Q&A with Jake. We've been asked to refrain from discussing DIY Loop and Night Scout, and I ask that you honor that request. Perhaps Jake will give us an opportunity to interact offline sometime in the future about our interests as it pertains to DIY systems, but tonight we are not doing that, and thank you for your cooperation. Please remember that Jake is here to talk about the current and future technologies with CGM, which we use 24/7 to stay alive. He is not in marketing or customer service, so please kind of hold your comments and questions to things that really actually are appropriate for the things he does for Dexcom. Just some of you who remember, we did a poll about a week and a half ago just to see how many of our users who were checking that week were using which CGMs, and there you have it, Jake. We are your customers. We're quite happy to be your customers. We will continue to be your customers. Overwhelmingly, we are Dexcom users, and overwhelmingly G6, with a huge curiosity about G7. So, what do we know about Jake Leach? Well, I just met him a few moments ago, Executive Vice President and Chief Technology Officer for Dexcom. He is responsible for the leadership of scientific research, engineering, product development, and project management. That's a lot. Jake oversees the development of next generation products and leads a large organization of amazing people. His teams are responsible for delivering best-in-class glucose monitoring technology paired with the exceptional user experience. Jake joined Dexcom in March of 2004 to lead development of sensor electronics, which were part of the first generation Dexcom system, which I actually had. Very cool. Jake has since served in various leadership roles at Dexcom, including Senior Vice President of R&D, Vice President of R&D, and Senior Director of R&D. So he's an R&D guys. Prior to Dexcom, Jake held positions in research and development at MiniMed and subsequently Medtronic Diabetes, focusing on the development of glucose sensing systems. He holds a Bachelor of Science degree in electrical engineering with a minor in biomedical engineering from UCLA, University of California, Los Angeles. And in his last year's interview that Jake had with Stacy Sims of Diabetes Connection, I pulled a quote, which I thought was most interesting for us. For the G7, our goal is to make it as interoperable as possible, which is one of the key important points about iCGM, that it's an interoperable device. We're thrilled to hear that. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop my share and I'm going to turn this over to you, Jake. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Joanne, and thanks everyone for joining. I'm thrilled to be here and be able to talk a little about CGM technology. Particularly, we're going to cover some aspects of G7 and talk about some clinical data that we recently gathered on the device. Show you some shots of that, and then answer some questions towards the end of the presentation. Joanne did a great job of kind of giving you my background. Engineer. One other thing is being based at Dexcom, our headquarters is in San Diego, so that's where I live with my family. My wife and I started our family right about the time I moved to Dexcom from MiniMed, or from Medtronic. When I was working at MiniMed, I was telling the group earlier, some of the early projects I had, I actually was an intern and was working on closed loop systems, some of the really, really early ones when we were first connecting an insulin pump via a very proprietary and challenging RF protocol to a computer. And the computers were what we were using to develop insulin delivery algorithms. So it was very early on. It was super exciting. And then in 2004, I got the opportunity to come down to Dexcom, which at the time was developing an fully implantable glucose sensor. The idea was it would be implanted for 6 months up to 12 months in continuous, accurate system, and at around that time frame, we kind of pivoted to doing the format you know today, which is the probe under the skin with the patch and the electronics above, and a lot of benefits to that pivot in our ability to move quickly. And so we did move very quickly, and as Joanne mentioned, the STS, our first product, a lot of the folks at Dexcom that are still there were some of the original technology founders. We worked on that together and developed many systems, and our goal was always to develop the most reliable system we could, so the best accuracy that was available at the time, and then get it to market as fast as possible. And that's kind of what the culture and foundation of Dexcom has always been about, is getting technology out to our customers, to our users as fast as we can. And so we do a lot of our design engineering, the way we run projects. It's all about that, putting the customer first. And there's been a lot of development and change over time from those CGM systems. I've worked on some of the original ones at MiniMed, the CGMS, which was the cabled one, and then through Dexcom's all the different generations. And it's an amazing place to work. It's continued to be as excited today as I was 17 years ago when I joined, because there's just so much opportunity for this technology to be enhanced, and also for it to reach more people around the globe. There's still a lot of people out there who don't have access to continuous glucose monitoring, and so that's one of our missions, is to get the product out to people around the globe that don't have access to it today. So with that, I'm gonna fire up a presentation here. Let's try and share my screen. All right, I'm gonna share that. Oh, hold on. I go back and make sure I'm sharing the audio, because I do have a video in here. Share, yeah, hold on, share. There we go. Share that. Okay, and we're going to put in presentation. Then we're going to switch. Okay. I want to make sure you guys can see that. So, someone give me a thumbs up, or a Joanne.
Thumbs up.
Okay, I got thumbs up. All right, perfect. Perfect. Okay. So. One of the things I thought I'd start with here is just a little bit about the ecosystem that we've developed. When we developed the first CGMs, it was really just the wearable connected up to a display device, and that's where the readings were made available. But when early on, around 2008, 2009, we really started thinking about how do we put this information on other display devices, insulin pumps. Smartphones were just starting. We're actually working with Blackberries early on. And what we realized was Bluetooth technology was a up and coming way for us to transfer information to many different devices. None of the medical devices had Bluetooth in them, but some of the mobile phones did. And we did a lot of work in that. And one of the things we found was the classic Bluetooth that was available at the time, it was used too much energy. So the wearable would have to be too large on the body for the battery. So we waited until Bluetooth low energy came out, which is a much more efficient Bluetooth protocol. And so that was really what kind of unlocked our ability to connect to smartphones. We worked with our partners in the insulin pump space. They integrated Bluetooth into their product. And so what we had with G5 was the first Bluetooth-enabled wearable on the body that could communicate to multiple devices. And if you look at the architecture of how we built the transmitter or the wearable part on the body, it's completely architected to be able to just communicate with multiple devices at the same time. We knew early on that we would want our signal to be able to go to insulin delivery devices or a receiver device, but we also wanted it to be able to go to the phone, and we didn't want you to have to choose. And so that was a really kind of foundational component of the G5 system that we've carried into G6 and that we're making even better in G7. I'll tell you a little more about it a little bit further along. So it all kind of starts with that accurate, reliable sensor and those Bluetooth readings getting to the display devices. One of the opportunities we've had being on a mobile platform now with iOS and Android is we have the ability to connect the Dexcom app with other apps the user may want to use. They can download. There's a number of apps you can see there. Those are all available today. You can download them and then link your Dexcom CGM with those different apps that provide different experiences and different information and data that complements the CGM. And so we are really have always been open with the way that our system is architected. We want to be able, the users to be able to have lots of choices. And so this is one of the ways that we do it. But the key is that it's always under your control, under the user's control. You get to decide where your data goes with these apps. If it does or doesn't, you have to do the connection with the credentials. So it's an important and growing part of our ecosystem. You can see that some of those systems that are mentioned there on Duo Level 2 with United, a lot of those are actually more focused for type 2 diabetes. Still the same G6 CGM at the heart, but a little bit different user experience focused on those patients' needs. So really excited about that growing ecosystem. I think there's about 30 apps available in the App Store from third-party developers that link up to G6, US and internationally. If we kind of just move to the right on this column is all of our insulin delivery partners. We've always believed that choice is important. And so whether you're on MDI or like much of this group on automated insulin delivery, we want you to be able to choose that. And so by the way that we do that is partnering with all of the different companies, as many as we can, as many as are willing to partner with us, and provide them with connections into our system. Some of them are directly to the transmitter with the Bluetooth. Some of these connections are through the cloud. And then some of these connections are through apps on the phone just locally. So a lot of different options. We try to be the best partner possible for these insulin delivery companies so that we can get technology out to customers as fast as possible. So we're really excited about our various pump partners and connected pen partners. And one thing, many of you are probably aware, but we do have actually a group within the R&D team at Dexcom that does work on automated insulin delivery algorithms, the Type 0 team, as we call them. They're based in Charlottesville, Virginia, close to the University of Virginia. They work pretty closely with the team there. And they developed the Control IQ algorithm that's in Tandem's Control IQ product. And we are working on next generation algorithms as well for use in those commercial systems. And we're very excited about Omnipod 5 coming out here soon with the direct connection between the G6 and Omnipod in a hybrid closed loop system. If you go down to the bottom left, our Follow app. Funny story about the Follow app. It was originated when we were doing work with diabetes camps. A number of camps in Northern California, particularly Bruce Buckingham out of Stanford, they were running these camps, and I appreciated what it was, but I didn't understand how challenging it can be for the counselors who have 30 kids. None of their parents are there, and they're responsible for all of these children. Some of them, still learning to manage diabetes. Some of them, their parents do most of the management. So it was kind of, they came to us and said, hey, can you help us with a remote monitoring system so that we can monitor these campers at night while they're sleeping? Because most of them are wearing your Dexcom CGM. We'd love to be able to monitor them. This is in the G4 days. And so we built a kind of a crude prototype system along with some folks from the community, some researchers, and we built the system, and it proved out to work really well. And then we started turning it into a product. I don't know if anybody remembers the Share Cradle. It was a device that you plugged your Dexcom receiver into, and it downloaded the data out of the receiver and sent the data to a smartphone via Bluetooth so it could be available in the cloud. That product, we developed it very quickly. It took about 6 or 8 months to develop it, but it took us 18 months to get it approved by the FDA because it was one of the first class 3 medical devices that was regulated by the FDA and on a smartphone platform. So it was new territory for the FDA. And so we did a lot of review with them on it and spent a good amount of time making sure they were comfortable that connecting the medical device to a commercial device like a smartphone was a safe thing to do. So it was really exciting. It paved the way for G4 with Share when we put the functionality right into the receiver, and also the G5 and the subsequent G6 and G7. It really helped pave the way for that. But it was a long review. Our cloud at the time, today, it's not this way, but back then it was actually, the cloud was considered part of the class 3 system as well. So it was quite a lot of, what that really means, class 3 is really high regulatory oversight. So that basically the FDA needs to see everything before you can put the product in the market. They have to see all the validation testing, your protocols, your safety, a lot of things that normally it's just the way you do business in, let's say, a class 2 product, but they have to actually review it before you can put it out. So that was why that took a good amount of time, but we were excited to get it out. We didn't sell very many because we moved right onto G4 and G5, but Follows app is really an important part of our portfolio, and we do intend to start making more updates more frequently to the Follow app. We've been very focused on G6 and G7, but we also have resources now dedicated for making updates to Follow. And then finally, in the bottom right there, we've got our healthcare providers, which are also a really important part of this ecosystem. And so we have our Clarity software that receives all of its data through our secure cloud from the mobile apps, or if you download a receiver, it'll also upload to Clarity. And so that's really a great tool for clinicians and endocrinologists and primary care physicians who have patients on CGM so that they can get quick reports. We also continue to evolve Clarity. We've got the Clarity mobile app, which is, many of you are probably aware of it, gives insights and a little bit more about retrospective views of data versus real time, but an important part of the system. We also have apps that are specifically for healthcare providers. There's a number of them there that they can use as well with our system. And an exciting area that we've continued to track forward on is integration with electronic health records. It's not easy because each hospital and clinic often has its own unique instance of an electronic health record, even if they have Epic. Each installation of Epic is one of the brand names. Each one's different. So when we kind of went in there, we thought we could just connect right up to it. We've learned over the years that you basically have to custom integrate it. And so we're working with some partners that are helping us do that. We've got a number of clinics across the country here in the US that have CGM data flowing into their electronic health record systems. And we're excited about that and to continue doing more there, standardizing actually the way CGM data is reported and uploaded into these medical record systems. I think is going to be one of the big steps that we're working with a couple of groups on there. So if we go onto insulin delivery in particular, it's, for us, we look at it as though it's the way the users want to deliver their insulin. We want to make it possible. I think many people are very familiar with Tandem and Omnipod. Ypsomed, Diabeloop, and CAMS APS. Diabeloop and CAMS APS are actually commercial closed-loop systems outside the U.S., Diabeloop in France and CAM APS in the UK. And they're continuing to bring that technology to more markets as well as Tidepool and Beta Bionics and Ypsomed are all working on systems that connect up to Dexcom and have automated insulin delivery of different types. Connected insulin pens. There's a lot of motion in this area. There was the company Companion that made the InPen. They were acquired by Medtronic. We're still compatible with that system. We're still partnered with that Companion through the Medtronic system. But really excited about the traction that was made there, and we believe that when Lilly and Novo come to market with their smart pens, it's going to be a really great option for folks who like to use multiple daily injections versus pumps. And I think we mentioned, I actually said 20. It looks like now we have 30 plus digital health apps in the various stores that are available to connect up to Dexcom CGM, and it's going to continue to grow, and lots of opportunities for developers to come through the Dexcom API. That's one of the main ways that we connect up with the apps. We have a real-time API that we are working on. The FDA is reviewing it right now. We've got a real-time aspect of that where it basically will upload data as fast as it's available. The retrospective one that's 3 hours delayed, that's the one that's available today. That's what these systems use, but we are excited about the real-time coming to market as soon as we get approval for it. So long awaited, and something, Dexcom, we've been working on our new generations. They take us about 5 or 6 years, sometimes longer, in between generations where we really start working on it and when it comes to market. And so one that we've been working on for quite a while and very, very excited about is the G7. Some of the beginnings of G7 date back to our relationship with Verily, which was, it's actually Google Life Science when we signed the agreement with them and started working together, and they quickly became Verily. But that was a group that we worked with on how do we miniaturize the electronics even further than what we've done. And so it was a great partnership. The teams worked together to develop the electronics within G7 that will be coming to market later this year. I do have a quick video here that shows you a little bit more about G7, and then after the video, I'll talk through some of the new features that G7 is bringing. I'm not going to cover everything with G7. There are some things that we want to be a delight and a surprise when we launch, but I will talk about a number of enhancements that I think you'll find exciting. So here's the video first. Sometimes I wish I was in. I wish I was in marketing. I think it's to make really exciting videos like that. So I'll dive in and talk through G7. As it really is a completely new CGM platform with a new level of customer experience, both in the wearable itself, the way it's deployed, the way it's packaged, how the setup wizard that you go through when you start it up, the mobile app experience, and then the different connected devices. So it's a step change in terms of convenience. And one of the features that I'm most excited about, because it was a really significant technology advancement, is a fast warm-up. So from the time the sensor is deployed onto the body, within 30 minutes, it will display CGM readings. In our trials, basically by the time the CGM is actually on and paired, there's generally 25, 26 minutes to go before real-time, accurate, reliable CGM data is shown. So very exciting feature. From working with these systems over the many years, we started with 2-hour warm-ups. Actually, we started with completely blinded systems. Then, Dexcom, we've had a 2-hour warm-up for the entire period. And the reason that is because we needed, all the technologies change over time, the sensor probe, the materials and the probes. We've done a lot of work to make the systems more reliable, and we've changed manufacturing processes, all kinds of things. But it's always, over time, always been a challenge from that first insertion where you have some trauma from the needle insertion, right? It cuts the tissue, it drops the sensor in there. There's a reaction there of the body to the sensor, as well as the sensor hydrating as it starts to hydrate and detects glucose. Being able to predict accurately during those first 2 hours was something we were fairly certain we could do it, but at the times of our previous systems, even G6, we couldn't do it well enough to show it to the user because it wasn't accurate enough. But with G7, we've made some really significant leaps forward in different aspects of the technology that have enabled this, and so we're really excited about that in G7. The other thing we focused on, not just making the wearable smaller, it's 60%, the part that's on the body is 60% smaller than G6 in volume. So it's a lot lower profile, and it's a lot smaller around. The patch is quite a bit smaller, as you can see here. And the applicator device is also smaller, so that generates less waste. But the packaging was also a really important part. We knew we could improve our packaging. So with G7, we have a 67% less packaging. If you see the G6 or G7 box, it's tiny when you put it next to a G6. That's great, more environmentally friendly. It's also, pharmacies would prefer to have smaller boxes on the shelves, so they're excited about that as well. The application is all done. It's very simple, one button press once the applicator's on the body. It's all in one, so the sensor and the electronics are one piece. They don't come apart like they do with G6, where you have the separate disposable and the reusable transmitter. It's all one with G7, and so that system is deployed, and then after 10 days of use, it's peeled off, and another one is adhered, so it's fully disposable. And one of the changes that we made with G7 is we did make some updates to Bluetooth. So G6 right now can connect up to 2 devices, just basically the phone and a medical device like a receiver or a insulin pump. With the G7, we've actually allowed for a third connection, so we now can connect directly to compatible watches. So that functionality capability is built into the G7 platform. So we're really excited about that being in there. It has been a long journey of understanding watch platforms and how they work. Just one note there is the watch, when you have the direct connection to it, becomes a receiving device. And so all of the alerts, alarms, and all the capabilities that have to work well on the mobile platform on the phones, the watch now has to do all of that. And watches weren't necessarily originally like the Apple Watch. They wasn't originally architected for that type of a use case where it becomes the primary device in all aspects. And so that's one of the things that we spent some time working together with Apple on, is perfecting it for the use case of it becomes your receiver when you walk away from your phone or your display device, with alerts, alarms, and all of those things. So really excited about the work going on there, and more to come. G7, as G6, it's iOS and Android compatible, will be from day one as soon as we launch. We have the real-time CGM alerts that you're used to. We've also made quite a few improvements. One of the things that I'll just note, I'm not going to give a bunch of details of how we did it or how it works, but there is the ability to silence sounds on the device, even the 55 alert, for a period of time. So that's a feature that we've been asked for many times. A lot of the alerts you can silence, but the 55 alert will come back every half hour if you're still under 55 milligrams per deciliter. So we do have an enhancement there that allows you to silence that, because we know it's important if you've got something going on and you're low and you've treated, but you don't want to be reminded in 30 minutes that you can use this feature. The G7 is factory calibrated, designed to meet the rigorous iCGM standard that the FDA set forth when G6 was approved. It's a very high bar, and performance has to be shown across a very large glucose range in a lot of patients across different wear sites, whether it's the arm or abdomen. With G7, we have studied it and plan to launch it in a format where it can be used on the arm or on the abdomen per labeling. So that was an exciting advancement with G7. G6 actually can be, outside the United States, can be worn on the back of the arm, but in the US it's only indicated for abdominal use, and then upper buttocks and kids as well. The system is 10-day wear. We get a lot of questions about that. We designed it, the platform can support 15 days or longer, but what we found was that the reliability of the sensors and the adhesive, we want sensors to last the full time, and when a sensor doesn't last the full wear period, it's not a great customer experience for the user. They have to get a replacement. We have to manage, getting them a replacement. So there's all this extra work involved and challenge for everybody when sensors don't last. And so what we want is almost all sensors to go the full wear period. And so with G7, the first iteration, we said we can get a lot of sensors to go 15 days or longer, no problem. But we need a really, really high percentage of all of them to make it the full wear period. So we made it 10 days at first, with an eye towards moving to 15 days when we get a little bit more technology developed to add that reliability that we want all the way out to 15 days. There's lots of, I've worked on lots of different systems that have, over time, we've learned that, you can claim a 15-day, 14-day wear, but does the sensor really last that long is the important part. That's more important to us than the actual labeling. It's also designed to work with smart pens and AID systems, just like G6 is. So it's got a very similar architecture. We've added some security enhancements, some cybersecurity enhancements, but it is basically designed to be very, very similar. And then in the app, we've changed the experience. It has a lot of the same functionality as G6, optional calibrations, all of those things. But there's also some new data insights that we're going to provide in the first version, and then we're going to build on it. It's an area we think where our data science team has been working to develop algorithms that give more information, more guidance, more advice around personalized information about CGM and users' glucose and where things are headed. So really excited about those as well. G7 just in itself, it's such a leap. Our CEO likes to say we took G6 and G7 does everything better. Every part of G6 that you like, G7 is even better. So we can't wait to get it out. We are studying it. We just wrapped up our US pivotal trial. And we have already completed the one for our European submission. One of the things I wanted to show you guys is some clinical data that we generated on G7. So this is clinical data that's generated by this is the way we run our studies. Patients come into a clinic 3 different times during the wear period. They come in either on day 1 or day 2 of the sensor wear. They go in the middle of the session around days 4, 5, 6, and then they come in on the last day on day 10. And what we do when they're in the clinic is they're overseen by a healthcare provider, and what they're doing is they manipulate their glucose for 12 hours. Sometimes they're low, sometimes they go high, and during that whole period they have blood drawn out of their arm, venous YSI. So we have a little peripheral catheter in their arm. We're drawing blood out. We're measuring it on an analyzer, and then for the study, what we do is we compare what the analyzer data says to what the CGM reading was at the exact same time as the sample was drawn. So that's how we generate what we call matched pairs. That's 46,619. That's the number of those matched pairs that we generated during this study on all the days. So I'll show you a graph here in a minute that just shows how wide of a glucose range. It runs the full gamut from 40 all the way up to north of 400 milligrams per deciliter. And the reason we do it is because we really want to understand the performance of the device across all the glucose ranges, across all the days of wear. So they tend to be quite large studies. This was about 100 subjects. This one was just the adult portion. We did a pediatric one as well. with very, very similar results. But this one's just the adult data. MARD is 8.7%. It's funny, MARD is one of those things that early on when we developed systems, it was the metric that we used, and it's still a metric we use today. It's the average difference between those CGM readings and the YSI. So on average, there's a difference of about 8.7% for G7 between the CGM reading and the YSI reference value, the venous draw. What I tend to pay much more attention to are metrics like percent 20/20. That's generally that's the number of points that are within 20% of the reference when it's above 100 milligrams per deciliter, when glucose is above. When it's below, it's 20 milligrams per deciliter. And the idea there is that if you're off by more than that, you might make a different clinical decision. And in the farther off you go, if you're like off by 40%, then you're actually probably making the wrong decision. So those are the metrics that I pay the most attention to, because those are the ones that tell you how well the device performs. MARD is important, but not as important as some of these other metrics. And the iCGM metrics that the FDA put forth to claim that your product is interoperable and meets those standards has a lot of metrics across percent 15/15, percent 20/20, percent 40/40 in all the different glucose ranges, whether it's hypoglycemia or hyperglycemia or euglycemia. So it's all about studying the performance of the device across a lot of different glucose ranges. So on to the actual chart here. Here's a chart that shows the beginning section. I told you to remember days like day 1 and 2, the middle of the wear, and then the end of the wear. And the number of points we captured are very similar across all of those days. We were, again, wanting to study the performance of the device across all the time period. And you see the MARD starts out good, gets even better as you go along. That's usually, all systems, there's a little bit of variability on the first day. You're not quite as tight as you are on the later days. Most of that's physiology now. It used to be sensors. Sensors had a lot, when early systems, there was a lot of variability in the sensors themselves, whether you put it in a person or you put it in a beaker of glucose. A lot of that with Dexcom's products, we've eliminated that, and now it's just down to physiologic impact of that, the first day when you put the sensor in. And you can see in percent 20/20 continues to get better as well. But overall, really good performance. And if you look at it, I like to look at it in these types of grids. This is a surveillance error grid. The idea here is it was designed to evaluate the performance of, it's actually originally designed for glucose meters, but it's a pretty good way to look at it. It tells you where a reading would cause a safety issue if you made a decision based on, here's the key, if you make a decision based on only that one point. That's the one difference between this metric and others, is that it's only for one point. And often, as you guys know, with CGM, you have a trend arrow and you have other things that help you influence you when you're making a treatment decision, or your automated insulin delivery system is determining how much insulin to deliver. So, but if you just look at it from a point per point basis, 99% of all the readings in this trial were safe. None or very, very low safety impact. So that's why it's all kind of grouped around that green zone. And the glucose reference on the bottom is the YSI. Measured glucose from the CGM is on the y-axis, and so you just draw a point along that line, and that's kind of how you see the distribution is pretty tight and goes that whole glucose range. All 46, every single point from the study is charted here, so you can see great alignment there. And so wrapping up on G7, it's a completely new CGM platform. Important aspects are that it's 60% smaller, very comfortable. We've done quite a few studies with them. I've worn quite a few of these things, and you forget you have it on. It's so small. The all-in-one applicator, transmitter, and sensor, it's all packaged together in one simple deployment. It's much smaller. 30-minute warm-up. The interoperability is designed in from the beginning, and so we are working with our insulin pump partners on integrating G7 into their products already, so that when we launch G7, they can come along as quick as possible with compatibility with G7. They have work that they have to do from a regulatory validation perspective to prove to the regulatory bodies that the system works well together. But the great thing is with iCGM, a lot of that was designed to make it more simple to validate a new platform without having to run another clinical study. That was the idea. You wouldn't want to have to run a giant clinical study every time a new sensor platform comes out. And then the entire system's designed around increasing the user experience, enhancing it, and really making world-class that the user experience that Dexcom is known for. We're not perfect. We know that there are challenges. We are always trying to be better and work through those challenges as they pop up. Really, really excited about this product, and it's launching towards the end of this year in a couple of markets, and then really launching in a much bigger way next year. But it's not very far off. And with that, I think we're doing good on time. I think we can shift on to Q&A.
Alrighty, lots of questions. This is wonderful. I'm so proud of everyone who's listening today, and thank you, Jake. That you put an awful lot in a short period of time. And I wanted the video to go on longer with just more, but it was like, okay, that's what marketing does. It makes you want more. Did a good job. I'm going to be turning my camera on, and Cassidy Robinson will be tag teaming me on the questions, so she can also take her camera off, and we'll just do gallery view. Okie dokie. I'm going to start with adhesives, because that's what I get a lot of messages on. Can you talk to that about what's being done currently in the G6, because people will continue to use this for quite some time? What about any changes for G7 and anything people can do who are having so much struggle with this?
Yeah, so I'm guessing, Joanne, you're talking about irritation with adhesives, right? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, cool. So a couple things. One, with G6, we have a very focused team right now. We've already run a number of clinical studies. We're trying to determine what is causing the irritation for some customers. We have it's a really small number in the grand, if you look at the percentage, but it's a serious, kind of customer experience issue, and that when you get that irritation. And we've seen plenty of pictures of it, of how bad it can get. And so we're very aware of it and working very hard to determine, and I think we're pretty close in figuring out the compounds that are in the adhesive. They're all designed to be biocompatible, low irritation. But one of the things that happens over time is everybody's bodies are a little different. And as you're exposed to different materials in the patches, some people just have allergies to them, things that many other people don't. And so we do feel, though, that we've run enough studies recently to determine a number of the compounds that are causing the challenges in the patch. There's like trace elements of it, but they can cause irritation. And so we will be making a change to that patch and removing those irritants. And like anything, I don't know if it's going to solve every single irritation problem, but I know it's going to solve a large majority of them. So we do need to go through all the channels to get that validated and get it out. But the science team's done a great job working through it. And it wasn't something we could figure out on the bench. We actually had to do clinical trials with people that were sensitized to that had irritation issues, so that we could figure it out. So, but we're excited that we feel like we've got a solution coming. And so we're going to get it to you as fast as we can.
So will that be also available on the G6? Will it only be going forward onto the G7?
No, it'll be on G6 too. We'll do it on G6, and G7 already is because it's actually a different sterilization method for G7 in its manufacturing process. It doesn't have some of the same components in the patch material, so we're really excited about it there. G7, we haven't seen any irritation in our studies. And it is a different patch, very similar, but different than G6. So both are designed for low irritation, and those changes will come to G6, and G7 already has them baked in.
We love to hear that. And this kind of goes along with that. A question from a mom of a little one. and your comments about the wearer experience, so the user experience, will patients be allowed to wear the Dexcom G7 longer than 7 days with the understanding that it might not be as accurate? That means less pokes for little ones, or will it be a dead stop at 10 days for all wearers? And I'm assuming some of it has to do with the adhesive ability as well.
One of the requirements for iCGM, one of the things that the FDA has enforced is that, and it was new with iCGM, which is why G6 and G5 are different. One of the requirements is that you can't enable sensors to run longer than the wear period. You have to shut them off, and you can't allow them to be restarted like G5 was. And so that's basically part of the iCGM requirements. Sorry, it sounds like someone's at my door. And it's part of the requirements, and so G7 will shut off at the end of 10 days, just like G6 does.
Okay. I'm going to turn this over to Cass.
Well, first, thank you, Jake, because it's really nice to have Dexcom in the room with us, as we've been kind of chipping away at everyone in tons of different tentacles of diabetes. It's really nice to get you guys here, because obviously we all rely on, many of us at least rely on you. And I'll apologize if you guys hear fast zooming cars. We are watching Formula One downstairs. I live with the sound guy, so you might hear it. So as part of G7, and you highlighted on this, so let's just do a broad overview. When it comes to the insert or applicator, is it reusable?
It's not. No, it's a single-use applicator. It's smaller than G6, but it isn't reusable. It's a kind of single-use.
Okay. And you said in Europe we have approval for abdomen as well as the arm. What about in the U.S.? Is there going to be any location difference outside of the abdomen?
So U.S. Sorry, Cass, go for it.
You know that we all wear them on our arms anyway. Can we get approval for it?
Yes, I've seen many pictures of folks wearing products on their arms. What I was talking about is, so G6 actually today outside the United States is labeled for arm use. It's just in the United States it's not, because we haven't run an iCGM level trial to get it approved for arm use. The iCGM is a U.S. focused metric, and so we haven't run that study. G7 we are. So G7 is designed to be abdomen and arm, both outside the United States and in the U.S. So G7 will have that. That was one of the important parts of our original design requirements for the product, was that it was flexible for both arm and abdomen use per label.
Any difference in insertion mechanism between G6 and G7? Obviously, they're not reusable. They are one button inserts.
Yeah, there's, in terms of the user experience, when you just it is a single button press still. It does insert the sensor, and there's a mechanical action that occurs inside the applicator. But the technology is quite different. There's a lot of things that are different about G6 and G7. G6, right, the sensor is connected to that little silicone seal that then the transmitter snaps together. So G7 doesn't have any of that. It's all the sensors connected directly to the device. So there is quite a few modifications we had to make. And there's a lot of technology in the applicator itself to deliver the sensor with the least amount of trauma in exactly the right spot without damaging it. I think early on when we had our manual applicators for the early systems, we didn't appreciate the challenge to make it automated. We do now with G6 with that automated applicator program. We learned a tremendous amount about how to do it well. And so we've taken that, built on it for G7. And so there are changes, but from a user experience, it's the same type of thing where you press a button and it automatically deploys.
Joanne, you want to touch on Apple-based items?
Oh, I'm going to jump back to usability. A question about the artificial increase in blood glucose readings after a shower or a hot tub or being in the sun. Is that normal? Are you addressing any of those issues?
Yes. So the glucose sensors are temperature sensitive. So as temperature rises, signal rises. So there are different techniques to account for that and try to basically make the signal not increase as much when the temperature goes up. So G7 has a more advanced system than G6 to do that. And so we're confident we've made improvements there. But it is based on, temperature increases will increase sensor signals a little bit, depending on how long you're in that temperature and how hot it is. It can increase it a little bit.
Would there be any way to tell it, hey, I'm going into the jacuzzi for 20 minutes, so adjust accordingly?
G7 is pretty good at figuring that out. So I think I think it'll definitely be an improved experience around temperature excursions with G7.
That's great. Okay, here's the big question that we've been also asked quite a bit. Is the G7 going to be better at avoiding compression lows?
So compression lows can happen with any sensor. And so what we've experienced is that depending on how you lie on the product and where you're wearing it, you can have a lot more compression versus other locations. And so, I don't think we'll ever be able to eliminate compression, because what happens basically is that you're not getting the same amount of glucose interaction in the tissue in that area because of the compression. So it's designed to be smaller, and the sensor probe is slightly different, and there are some aspects there to get after compression, but you still have to be careful. I mean, with any CGM, you have to be careful with making sure if you're having compression lows, you got to work on location, and it is one of those. I understand how frustrating it is. I've experienced it myself.
A lot of the questions we're going to have to do with first day or last day and accuracy and the warm-up time. And I've been reading not on our sites, but on what I consider regular type 1 sites about the sense of panic for that period of time where we don't have data. So if it's a half-hour warm-up on the G7, at half an hour, it starts reading automatically, or do you need to calibrate?
Nope. It just starts reading just like G6. The display will start up. It's just with G7 it's a lot faster. It's 30 minutes versus those 2 hours. So no calibration is required, and accurate data from that data I showed for the accuracy included. We started sampling at 27 minutes, right when before the first reading came out of the CGM. So we know that it's accurate in that time period. Okay,
so if you start to see wonky readings, you do put in calibrations as we've always done. Is that the way 7 works?
Yeah, I treat it the same way. I think sometimes if you calibrate too many times on day 1 during an excursion, you kind of maybe have to calibrate it a little bit more to fix it after the fact. That's one of the experiences that some customers have. But yeah, you can calibrate it on that first day to get a little closer to your meter if desired. So yeah, it's a very similar approach as G6.
Okay, 2 more questions that I'm going to throw back to Cass. You said the packaging is smaller. That's always been, if anyone travels, that's a nightmare to carry what you need. E-waste recycling program, do you have anything in the works for that?
We've so with recycling programs, we've looked at them quite a bit in terms of how to actually implement one. And what we found is that we're always looking for options to do it and make it successful. But as of right now, with the Sharp in there and the biohazard component of the device, recycling, while possible, isn't all that feasible for all of us. So our approach, we took a different approach. We said, let's make it as absolutely small as we possibly can so that what you throw away is substantially less. And there's quite a bit of enhancement in the packaging. You'll notice when you see a G7 that there's a lot less papers, plastic wrappers. It's not just smaller. There's less stuff too that gets thrown away. So that was our approach because that will impact every customer whether they recycle or not.
Do you have one on your desk that you could hold up?
I don't. I'm at my home office. I don't have one, but it's quite small. The box is very small.
Okay. All right. And I've seen what Abbott has done, and it's a small packaging device. But yeah, it'll be fun to see what comes out. And you had mentioned something about upcoming real-time app that you're developing. And I was just wondering, what do you expect to go into that other than blood glucose? Will there be insulin data? Will there be settings data or carbs and activity?
So what I was mentioning is a good question. So I was mentioning our Realtime API. So that's our cloud connection for third-party developers. So folks that want to connect their app and consume Dexcom data, or conversely want to upload data to our cloud. For example, with the InPen, we get insulin data from the companion app into Clarity. So Clarity has data, insulin data in it from that pen. So that's an example of they're downloading CGM data from us and then uploading insulin data. Today, though, that's all done for the CGM component of the system. Those are all 3-hour delayed. It's retrospective data. It's not real time. We have a new system we've been working on. It's based on the retrospective API, but it's a real time, so that the data, CGM data, is available as real time information, basically as fast as it can get through the cloud and the database. So it doesn't have that 3-hour delay on it. So we're going to treat it the same way as we do our retrospective API. We've got a number of kind of agreements that folks sign, and it's all about, they work on a very small number of accounts until we get to a point where it is an approved product, and then we can open it up to a bunch, basically anybody CGM user can then use it if they want. That's the idea. So we want to do that with real time. The FDA has been, I think you guys probably heard, they've had a tremendous amount of things to do during COVID, reviewing lots of emergency authorizations. We got emergency authorization to use CGM in the hospital, which has been a really fantastic kind of experience for us, as well as for those folks trying to manage glucose in the hospital. They were able to start using CGMs instead of finger sticks and lab draws, so that was pretty exciting. But the FDA was very, very busy, so they weren't able to get to a lot of these things to review. So that real-time API is hopefully it's approved soon, but we're kind of letting the FDA get their stuff done first. They've got quite a bit to get through.
Yeah, we've heard that. Cass, give me one more question to put in here that just came in. Would there be a chance for a dosage calculator integrated into the Dexcom app to allow for dosing with the arrows?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in making bolus calculations easier, and so I really like that concept. And a number of our insulin delivery partners have been working on those things. We've developed some of our own technology as well. We haven't. I think the key there, what we've learned is, in order to do that, you have to have good knowledge of the insulin that's been delivered already. And what we found is that the only real good way to do that is have a connected system, whether it's an insulin pump or a connected insulin pen, where you actually have accurate readings of how much insulin was delivered and when. That can really help if you're giving someone advice on insulin delivery, such as a bolus calculator based on not only the glucose reading, but also the arrows. You also need to kind of account for what else has been going on. So that's in the works. And it may ultimately come to market in a Dexcom app or in one of our partners' apps, but I think that's clearly part of the future, is making bolusing data more available and easier.
That would be absolutely fabulous. I'm going to kick this over. Cass is having difficulties with Wi-Fi. So Sarah's going to jump in and ask you a bunch of stuff about Apple Health and Apple Watch and other devices.
Well, one of the things we're noticing right now, there's a lag in Dexcom data to the Apple Watch, and in which place we use SugarMate to get instant data through Share. Since Direct to Watch is coming with G7, have they, I guess this question has is there any way that we don't have to always push on, like on our watches? It's like the Dexcom app is not always helpful because it doesn't automatically update with the information. So I guess that's what we're trying to figure out with G7, if that would be possible.
Yeah, yes, the direct connection to the Bluetooth allows it to run all the time. And that also, it maybe sounds like that's maybe a follow user. Follow is also different. Or is that a G6 user?
It happens with mine all the time. So I have SugarMate set up because it updates more, and the Dexcom app for me on my watch doesn't.
Interesting. And are you talking about when you open up the app on the screen, or are you talking about the complication, the
complication on my watch? Yeah.
Yes, yeah, the watch complication. So yeah, we've definitely made some enhancements to that. Early on, Apple restricted, you couldn't update the complication 288 times a day. They wouldn't allow you to do that. So we had some algorithms in there trying to limit the amount of times so that we could give users the best amount of information we could, but we weren't able to update it every 5 minutes. Apple wouldn't allow that. But there's been a lot of changes both in our system and theirs. And so with G7, there will be improvements on the availability of that data, because I think the use case, everyone's starting to figure out that you need to be able to update that complication. The other thing too is when you start talking about things like direct to watch, you can have a real-time, Dexcom as your watch face. So that can help a lot too in terms of availability of information.
And so there was a question in the chat that said, does that mean that the watches will work as a receiver if the phone is left behind? So if I'm running on a quick errand, we don't have to take it. And will that also work for follow?
So that's the design. That's the idea, is that the benefit of direct to watch is you can leave your phone behind, and your watch becomes your receiver when you separate, or your display device. But as I mentioned before, the key with that was making sure that the alerts and the alarms worked when you do that. The last thing you want is to do that and have the alerts not work. And some of the original architecture of the Apple Watch could have happened. So we took a pause and continued to work on the architecture with Apple. Now we're really excited. There's been lots of enhancements over the last couple of years to make it make it work. So yeah, G7, the wearable has the compatibility built in the Bluetooth, and then we'll bring compatibility to the apps over time with the direct watch feature actually comes out from the app. The app, you download it to the phone and then to the watch, and then that connection occurs. So we'll bring it to market over time on the apps.
Okay. And as a follow-up also, before I send it back to Joanne, will the delay with it on the watch also, will the delay between the Dexcom readings and the entry in the Apple House system, will that be removed with the G7 also, or will that remain the 3-hour delay?
For now, it'll remain the 3-hour delay. That's dictated by the FDA. The reason why we've got our real-time API as a possibility is basically based on the controls we have in our agreements with the users of the real-time API. The FDA views real-time data. I think you guys probably all know this. They view that as depending on what's done with it, it can have safety concerns about it. So they like us to control it quite tightly. And so our Apple Health is pretty much wide open. Once we put the data in Apple Health, anybody can consume it that the user selects. And so we don't have any control about what happens with that data or knowledge of what happens with it. And so the FDA is not comfortable with that today. So it's still going to be 3-hour delayed.
Okay. And what someone just in the chat wrote, will the watch be able to upload to share without a phone?
It's one of the things that I'm really excited about with the new cloud connected watches. First versions won't do that because we still have work to do. We're working through all the limitations of how often can you upload to the cloud, how much battery does that use. So we're still working through those, but it is part of the roadmap to enable that function. Because I think the use case is pretty clear. And you got a child wearing the Apple Watch and uploading to share. It's a pretty great thing, and the watch is connected to their arm; they're not going to lose it. So, it's harder for them to lose it, leave it behind. So we're really excited about that option, and are working hard to make it happen.
That's great. Okay, Joanne.
Okay, I've got some cleanup issues a bunch of kind of random questions and then into kind of the roadmap. Really good question. The overlay patches, will they ever come automatically with the sensor instead of having to call for them?
Yeah, we are looking at how to do that. We originally, it was calling for them because we weren't sure how many people wanted to use them and how they would work for everyone. But now we've got a lot of users, customers who really like them, and we feel like it's something that should be provided. So yeah, we're working through how to do that properly. Like anything, it's never as easy as I think it's going to be when I ask the team to do it. So we're working on it though. But yeah, the overlay patch is a great tool for helping keep the sensors on, and we want to move in that direction for sure.
That's great. So I want to look at the roadmap. I know there are very few people still on G4, but we don't, that they just are where they are. G5 users outside of the US, will they be transitioned to G6 or will they be transitioned to G7, or are they stuck in G5 land forever?
No, yeah, it's a great question. One of the things that we're doing a little different with G7 is we're working, we're still launching G6 around the globe. There's still new countries that G6 is being introduced even, 3 years after launching the product in 2018 when we first launched it. So G7, our goal is to launch as fast as possible. So we want users to get the products in all, as many countries as possible, as fast as possible. So we definitely, that conversion to G7 is going to be faster than it was over on G6. And so we're, every market's a little different. There's some, believe it or not, there's some areas where the regulatory process takes 2 years. So, you kind of, there will be some differences. We also, our pump partners, anybody who's on a G6 on a connected AID system, we want to make sure that those sensors are available until those systems are fully upgraded to G7. So G6 will be around for sure, but our goal is to get G7 to as many people as we can, as fast as we can.
So the countries that are currently only have G5, will they transition directly to 7, or are you negotiating to get them G6s?
Yeah, some of those are already in motion with G6, right? Like I said, when it takes that long to get something approved, we submit G6 a long time ago, and it'll hopefully get approved soon, and then we start the process over with G7. There's some countries that'll go directly to G7. It's all about what product can we get to the market as fast as we can, and so it gets complicated in all the different countries because each one, there's different regulatory agencies. There's a CE mark from a notified body, but then there's unique in-country registrations in many countries in Europe. So there's quite a bit there. And then to talk about some of the other countries, Canada has their own Health Canada approvals, and so it's all we attack it from all angles. But there's definitely complexity out there in getting products. But our goal is with G7 to get it out faster than we did G6. Okay.
And then the next question is about transition from G6 to G7. Will there be an upgrade program, or do we have to buy something all new?
We're going to figure it out. I mean, the great thing about the way our product's architected is with G7, you get everything you need. And you have the sensor, the transmitter, the applicator. You download the phone app, and you're up and running, right? And if you want to get, there is a new receiver, as you saw in the video, for G7. And so that is a new product for G7. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much when you're done with your G6s, you just switch over to G7 as fast as you can. So we always work to figure out how do we make it easy for customers to switch. It's in their customers' interest as well as ours to get them onto the new technology. So we'll figure that out. But that is one of the nice things about G7 is there's no 90-day transmitter. You just go right to the sensor and the applicator every time.
Do you want us all to send you back our receivers? We can do that.
No, you can keep those.
Okay, thanks. The question about Medicare. I was one of the early people battling with Medicare. It was 4 or 5 years of pure hell with Medicare, and it hasn't been smooth, but it finally is. will it be a smooth transition then with the G7 with Medicare?
I expect so. I don't know all the details there. Certainly, my expectation and my understanding is that it will move through. We'll do, there's a launch into Medicare plan. So yeah, there's, as you mentioned, a lot of work has been done over time to make that process of getting the product through Medicare or, covered by Medicare easier. It was a real bear early on. I remember the meters, we had to ship meters and finger sticks with G5 because it's calibrated. All those things are kind of alleviated with G6, and G7 will follow a similar format. So it will be available for Medicare customers as well.
Quickie question, and then I've got long-term stuff. The Omnipod 5 that should be coming out possibly by the end of the year is working with the G6 or the G7 or both?
So the clinical study they just ran and the approval that they're seeking to launch is with G6, but we are working with them already to integrate G7 into it. So they're, timing there, there's still work to be done and all the schedules aren't completely finalized, but they already have G7 technology. They're already working with it. They're already integrating. So the hope is that they can very quickly, once G7 is approved for use, that they can get their validation done and get the compatibility there. So the intent is, because it's an iCGM, or will be, G7 will be an iCGM, just like G6, the upgrade or the process around getting compatibility there is much simpler than it was in the past.
Okay, I'm winding down. You'll be able to get dinner real soon. So in terms of the future, what happens after G7? Will there be sensors that are internal? Will there be sensors that include other measuring devices? Will they be non-invasive? What do you see for the path?
Lots there. What I would say is that we have lots of innovation going on still beyond G7. G7 is at this point for us pretty much baked, other than we'll continue to increase software functions and capabilities and continually launching new capability on the software side. We are working on our next generation wearables. The idea there is always more convenient, smaller, less waste, lower cost to manufacture, all those things. So we still have that technology effort. I think the question around invasive, non-invasive, I stay very close to the community that works on non-invasive technology. I'm very, aware of a lot of what is going on there. And what we continually see is that there's a lot of good ideas and a lot of theoretical options. But once you kind of get into the reality of implementing the technology, none of it that we've seen has anywhere near the level of accuracy and reliability that we kind of need for these products. So we continue to monitor it, but I think a non-invasive sensor that works as well, as accurately and consistently as G6 and G7 is highly unlikely. I'm not going to say never, because if there was a technology, we'd want to implement it and integrate it and if non-invasive would be great. I think our approach has been make the product as less invasive as possible. So, you're talking about smaller sensors, smaller needles, shorter sensors, more comfortable to wear, because we feel that to get the accuracy required, you got to be in contact with that glucose molecule physically. And so that the chemistry on the tip of our sensor is in contact with the glucose in the body. And so that's where we feel is how you're going to get the level of accuracy. Alternate analytes outside of glucose. Glucose is so important in many, many different aspects within diabetes and outside. I think there's still a tremendous amount we are going to be doing with glucose, but there are other analytes. The G7 platform, one of the concepts when we went into it was making it capable of doing other analytes. So some of the hardware is there. We still have sensor work to do, but we're really excited about some of the different things. We can take our knowledge of how to sense glucose and apply it to some of these other analytes. So it's definitely it will be part of the future.
Okay, I remember in the 1980s, probably before you were born, the Dream Beam that was coming out someplace in Maryland, and I was living there in the time and thought, I'm just going to camp out in their parking lot and just take one. And it never came to market because they couldn't. It was based on the technology that tested the sweetness of grapes, but it never happened. So I think that's a ways off as well. And my final question, which I'm sure you expect, is when do you think we should see an approval for the G7, and when will it be available for us to buy?
Next year. It'll be available next year.
Next year is a lot of months.
Yeah, it's one of the things, there's a regulatory review period that is not, I don't control it, so we don't know how long that's going to take. Hopefully it's quick, but there'll be more to come on our public statements around the actual timing, but it's not far off. So we're very excited to get it out.
So if you had to close your eyes and put your finger on a month or a quarter, you'd say first to second quarter?
I'm not gonna give any specifics there.
Okay.
I get myself in trouble giving specifics. I think we're gonna get it out as fast as we possibly can,
Okay.
and we're really excited about it.
I just want to thank you so much. What I will do is send you the questions in the chat so you have an idea of what's been asked here. We would love to follow up with you very much offline when time allows. And I just, for all of us, thank you so much for the time. I know it's been a very busy week, and we really wanted to hear what you had to say, and we got to. So thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity, Joanne and team and the group here. It's been a pleasure to spend some time with you guys.
All right, thanks so much. Have a good